Wow, Ethan, great moves. Keep it up. Proud of you.
Today we're ranking the H3 podcast backgrounds from a scale from A to F, where A represents the best of the best, and F represents the ones that just fell a little flat. I'll be judging the background based on several factors. Number 1, aesthetic. How visually appealing and memorable does the background feel? Number 2, cohesion. How the background reflects the H3 podcast personality and themes. Number 3, atmosphere. How inviting and comfortable does each set feel? My name is Alex Serrano, and I've been watching the H3 show since it first started. So let's dive in and see which ones rise to the top and which ones do not. Number 1, The Howard Stern Show Studio. The OG, the purple couch, the classic discussion table angles. The first H3 podcast set featured a cozy, relaxed vibe with a deep purple couch and other retro-inspired elements that paid homage to the classic radio shows, specifically The Howard Stern Show. This initial background felt intimate, aligning with the early days of the podcast, when the show focused heavily on interviews and casual, unscripted discussion. Over the lifespan of the setup, we see improvements in the lighting, the change in the monitors, and additions to a few items in the background, like the talking beanie and the Belle Delphine spit bottle. Ethan, Hila, and the crew switched to the basement at the start of COVID, went back to the studio for a few episodes, then left the studio one last time when the pandemic started to go wild again. The last classic studio background episode was the H3 podcast episode 196, giving the background a lifespan of 3 years and 2 months. For being their first studio set, I think it does a great job with how it looks and how it reflected the show's tone at the time. I will say that the lighting left a lot to be desired, which is understandable since it was so heavily focused on discussion and many fans were purely listening at the time. With all that being considered, let's rank this background. I think the OG belongs firmly in B. Now let's move on to the next background. Number 2, the COVID basement 4-panel background. The H3 podcast basement setup during COVID featured a distinct background with a 4-panel wall, reflecting the need for a simpler, home-based studio that was mostly practical over being visually engaging. The setup was born out of necessity as many creators shifted to a home studio during the pandemic, and it represented a more minimalistic, functional approach compared to their prior set. The background offered little in terms of changes during this time in the basement until they would start after dark. They added a drawing from who I'm assuming is Teddy, then they removed it, leaving behind thumbtacks, then added the Oliver tree painting, which would remain for the entirety of the 4-panel basement studio. The background premiered on episode 183, and the last episode featuring this background was H3 podcast number 228, giving this background a span of 8.5 months. The background, while not painful to look at, definitely left a little bit to be desired. I'm gonna put this one in D tier. Now we're going to start discussing the H3 After Dark backgrounds. There are 3 we have to talk about, and we are going to go in order of when they first premiered, starting with the neon sign and purple background. The first H3 After Dark set had a purple background, which helped define the show's initial tone, a mix of casual conversation and edgy humor. They were still in the basement when they premiered this new format. The purple hue gave a cool, laid-back vibe, while the minimalistic design helped keep the focus on Ethan, Hila, and their discussions. This setup reflected the podcast's attempt to explore a slightly darker, or more relaxed atmosphere compared to their main show, aligning well with the title, After Dark. This background started with After Dark number 1 and ended with After Dark number 15, with 2 Christmas backgrounds transitioning between this era of After Dark and the next, giving the purple lighting background a lifespan of 3.5 months. The vibes are pretty great, but still a little on the boring side. I'm going to have to drop this in C. The next H3 After Dark background we have to talk about is the colorful construction paper background. The construction paper background marked a shift towards a more playful, DIY aesthetic. This background featured colorful construction papers formed in an almost abstract design, giving a whimsical, almost nostalgic feel to the set. It was a clever choice that added personality and gave the impression of a more informal, homegrown production, especially considering that they were still in their basement at the time of shooting these episodes. The background premiered on H3 After Dark number 18 and ended with H3 After Dark number 36, giving this background a lifespan of 4 months. I think this background is very lovely, and at least belongs in A tier. Now we move on to the final H3 After Dark set, which is the graffiti background. The graffiti background represented a shift towards a more urban, edgy look, signaling a more mature and evolved phase of After Dark. The setup featured a vibrant graffiti-style art, giving the show a street-inspired, creative vibe that felt dynamic and visually compelling. This background was made for the new studio after they stopped making the show in the basement. Ironically, the background would become less and less dark and lighter as time went by. The graffiti background episodes ranged all the way from H3 After Dark number 37 the H3 After Dark number 143, giving this background a lifespan of 2 years and 10 months. Despite the brightness issue, no one can deny how amazing this looks. This is definitely an S tier background. All rise for an honorable Ethan because the next background we're discussing is Content Court. The Content Court set was designed to resemble a courtroom, complete with dark wooden panels and judicial themed decorations, which added a humorous sense of formality. Ethan often dressed as a judge, which added to the courtroom feel, while other members played roles like prosecutor or defense, with Eda looking like a baddie in her bailiff outfit. The set design combined with the props, like the judge's gavel, gave the impression of a quirky parody courtroom where internet controversies were put on trial. In more recent episodes, the court audience has been filled with characters we've seen on the show before, like PMP, Ethan's parents, XQC, Fat Love, and more. This one is tough because for the most part, it's just a normal courtroom with some H3 elements in the background. I don't think it's themed quite enough to fit the whole H3 universe just yet. I would like more references or more creativity with the backgrounds and themes. I think I'll be putting this at C tier. We now move on to one of the most iconic backgrounds of all time, and of course I'm talking about the Frenemies background. The Frenemies set featured a bold pink and black color scheme, divided down the middle to represent the Frenemies concept visually. Ethan's side was black, while Trisha's side was pink, each color chosen to reflect their personalities. Ethan's more subdued, and Trisha's lively and vibrant. The table itself was similarly split, with each side decorated with their respective color, reinforcing the theme of contrast. Since this was such a hit show, they went all out with background decorations for themed episodes, like adding a bunch of hearts for Valentine's Day or balloons for Trisha's birthday. The background was so iconic, and Frenemies ended so abruptly that they used this set for their next series, Families, featuring Ethan's mom, Donna Klein. For the last few episodes of Families, the iconic split color design of Frenemies was replaced with a softer, more family-oriented aesthetic. The stark pink and black scheme was replaced with a color palette that included softer tones, giving a warmer and more welcoming vibe. The last time we saw this iconic backdrop and table was for the episode titled Frenemies is Back But Short-Lived, which was a clickbait episode featuring Oliver Tree. This set had a lifespan of 1 year and 9 months. I think everyone saw this coming, but with how iconic and amazing this background is, it's obviously gonna go in S tier. So now we move on to one of the most iconic backgrounds to one of the least iconic backgrounds of the series. And that, of course, is the white brick wall. I don't have too much to say about this background, other than it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a white brick wall with some lighting effects. Eventually, they added the podcast name to it, and that's about it. The backdrop was primarily used for guest episodes. While it serves its purpose as a neutral and professional looking set, I find it painfully uninspired. It feels sterile and out of sync with the playful, unpredictable, and often chaotic energy that defines the H3 podcast. For a show so rich in personality and humor, this background is surprisingly bland, almost antithetical to the spirit of the whole podcast. For those reasons, I hate to do this, but this has to go in F. Now it's amazing what some portraits can do to elevate a bland background into something a little special. And of course I'm talking about the era of Off the Rails featuring the Harvey Weinstein portraits. This small change completely altered the vibe of the set. Suddenly it was a quirky, goofy, and undeniably H3 show. Dedicating an entire background to one vindictive lol cow, former Hollywood executive, was both absurd and hilarious. At one point the portraits even started to eclipse the podcast sign, which only added to the chaotic charm. Toward the end of this Off the Rails era, they began removing some of the portraits, though the reason isn't entirely clear. Maybe it was a legal concern, or maybe they just wanted to freshen things up a bit. Either way, this was a short-lived background that lasted only about 3 months, but left a lasting impression on fans and perfectly encapsulated the unpredictable nature of the show. It's such a simple addition that adds so much. Unlike the plain white wall background, this one feels so alive. I have to give this one at least a B tier. Now let's talk about the H3 TV nature background. The H3 TV nature background utilized large visual elements, often displaying vivid, high-quality footage of images of nature such as lush forests, serene lakes, or rolling hills. These images were often full screen, creating an immersive effect. This design shift made the show feel less like a typical studio podcast and more like a visual, virtual escape. The visual focus was on the beauty and the tranquility of nature, offering a stark contrast to the usual cluttered, urban aesthetic that dominates many talk shows and podcasts. Once they stopped using the stone wall for Off the Rails, they used the same green screen effect for Off the Rails too. The background would often shift with the seasons. The leaves would turn orange with the fall, the lakes would freeze over during winter, and the area would become a beach during the summer. This background premiered with H3 TV Episode 1 and ended with the episode titled Responding to the Allegations, giving this background a lifespan of 2 years and 8 months. I think this background is pretty good, but my main issue is it doesn't really scream H3 to me. If I took Ethan off of the background, it's just a pretty forest. And for this, I'm going to be tossing this in B. Next up, we have The Leftovers $20 Billion Studio. The Leftovers podcast, hosted by Ethan Klein and Hassan Piker, featured a set designed to resemble a newsroom-style environment. The background had a professional and polished look which fit the serious yet engaging political discussions they tackled. The set included multiple screens, bold graphics, and dynamic visuals, all adding to the atmosphere and supporting the topics at hand. I also think this design serves as a clear parody of CNN's Newsroom and Alex Jones's InfoWars. Despite the polished look, The Leftovers still kept some of the H3 signature aesthetic, with the purple lighting undertones that tied it all back to the H3 brand. The Leftovers ran for 2 years and a half a month. The studio is fun, but it's just kind of boring in my opinion, especially if you're not into politics. The background was not dynamic or changed much over time either. I'll be placing this in C tier. Next background we're going to talk about is the official Off the Rails background. The Off the Rails set featured a distinctive background design with a playful and chaotic aesthetic, reflecting the more spontaneous, offbeat nature of this show. The most notable feature of the background was a large, derailed train graphic which emphasized the show's themes of unpredictability and humor. This train, which seemed to represent the idea of the show going off the rails, was accompanied by other fun, quirky elements that enhanced the sense of absurdity and lightheartedness. The background changed once, just after the premiere, and never again. This background ran for just under a year. I like this background just a little bit more than the H3 TV background with all the silly, quirky elements you can find throughout. All that being considered, I think this is one of Cameron's best works, and I'm going to be placing it in A tier. Now we're going to talk about one of the most controversial backgrounds of the show, and that of course is the H3 Show version 1 background. The new H3 Show background premiered on April 22nd, 2024, and it was met with mixed to negative reactions. The previous era of backgrounds was so beloved and memorable, so no matter what they came up with, it was always going to be hard to please the fans. Personally, I think the direction they took was a huge misstep. The H3 Show's original background was inspired by late night talk shows, but that's not what the H3 podcast was about. The podcast had thrived on being the antithesis of typical late night TV. It's messy, unpolished, unapologetically uncorporate. Trying to merge these two concepts just doesn't work. The set also had these tacky curtains all over, which made the space feel cluttered and less immersive. One thing I will give credit to is the subtle change in the background to reflect the passing of time, shifting from afternoon to evening. While it didn't completely fix the issues with the set, it did add a small layer of depth that helped the overall atmosphere. It's not as bad as the plain brick wall background, but I don't like it more than the 4-panel COVID basement background either. All that being said, I think this has to go in D tier. K-ETH 101! This era of the backgrounds is so damn charming. It's packed with so many references, memes, and the hilarious radio station theming that's absolutely perfect for the show. The K-ETH 101 set channels a retro radio station vibe with bold graphics, visuals, and quirky elements that reflect the chaos and humor the H3 podcast is known for. The addition of new atmospheric soundbites and overall fun energy really takes this background to the next level. Everything about it just works. It's playful, unpolished, and totally on brand for H3. This set's retro broadcasting aesthetic blends perfectly with the show's offbeat and anti-corporate vibe, making it both nostalgic and hilariously fitting at the same time. Some of the references include the Howard Stern inspiration, mixed with the classic Simpsons meme, the band Ethan was a part of, the Cam Bunny from the old H3 TV background, Fortnite Ninja, Gamer Subs, the Bowie plushie, the H3 logos, the radio poster, which is a really obscure joke made one time on the show. I think this background is perfect, and I'm so glad it's one of the current ones being used to this very day. I have to give this one to S. Now that we're done with all the main backgrounds, we're going to quickly rattle off all the other backgrounds that was featured on the show for one-off segments, live shows, or special events. The only rule is that the background can't just be a random stock photo. It has to be themed and edited for the show or segment in some way. There are likely some I missed, so if you know any I missed, let me know and I can make an update to this video in the future. I'm going to go through these very quickly, so let's get started. Number 15, make Ethan laugh. Half-baked background like the idea for this series. I wish they did at least 2 more episodes to see how it would have changed over time. F tier. Number 16, Family's Feuds. Hilarious, cute, and I wish it would return someday. A tier. Number 17, Mr. Verified. Epic, iconic, and super memorable. We need a Mrs. Verified now. S tier. Number 18, the Laugh You Lose specials. They get better and better over the years. Always great to see this series for Thanksgiving. I love that they started adding more references. B tier. Number 19, the Steamies backgrounds. Very nice. I love seeing the formal clothes for such a silly show. Great theming and great vibes. S tier. Number 20, Louder with Klein. Another cam masterpiece. Damn, we only saw it once for one segment, and briefly as a joke 1 or 2 more times after that. It's also great how the H3 TV background can be seen just through the window. A tier. Number 21, the Twiguys. One of the best modern segments they ever did. The background graphics are hilarious, and I love the Twiguys reference. B tier. Number 22, H3 TC. Ethan loves true crime, and it's a damn shame he didn't explore this genre more. I hope he comes back to it in the future so we can reuse these backgrounds. This background is epic. C tier. Number 23, Girly Slumber Party. Love all the girly vibes on the show. Hope they do another slumber party again soon. Look, even Bobby got into the vibes. B tier. Number 24, Ethan Klein's Roast. It's pretty cool background, and I'm still waiting for Dan Roast. B tier. Number 25, Silent Library. It's pretty much normal library. D tier. Number 26, the Crackers Extravaganza. I'm not the biggest fan of Leftovers, but even I enjoy this background a lot. It's super funny, I love the Friend style of text, and it's great theming considering what was going on at the time. B tier. Number 27, the Hot Seat. Awesome background for the segment. It's a modified version of the H3 TV background for the Spicy Chip segment. A tier. Number 28, the Bach3lor Couch. Way too basic. F tier. Number 29, the St. Paddy's Day background. Another modified version of the H3 TV background. Would have loved to see more silly things in the background. B tier. Number 30, the Beevo English background. Hilarious, and love all the random English references. This gets at least an A tier for having Gabe a part of the background. Number 31, the Bachelor Dinner background. It's cute, but I think it could have done well with a little more theming. D tier. Number 32, no more horsing around. It's hilarious, and does pretty well with the concept that they were discussing. Love that they actually went to buy a whole bale of hay for this segment alone. This is gonna get a C tier. Number 33, the Bachelor premiere featuring Jeff Wittek. This is the best background of the Bachelor episodes featuring Jeff. A tier. Number 34, H3 University. Hilarious, but I think it could use more theming. I love the funny props that they have in the background, especially the Ty Lopez portrait. C tier. Number 35, Oliver Nighttime. I'm not too crazy about the Oliver Tree episodes, but this one is freaking awesome. You already know I love the original After Dark graffiti background, so this is even better in my opinion, with the parody layer added on top. S tier. Number 36, the Sour Sea. Love the H3 modified backgrounds. As good as the H3 TV one or better. This one is another B tier. Number 37, Farewell Fika. A silly and fun enough to the Sustroming series. Great work done here. B tier. Number 38, the Newsroom Election Day background. This one's kinda crappy. They just added the H3 logo in front of the background, and is also associated with the terrible vibes of the election stream. This one's an F. Number 39, the Greek live show background. I think they put a lot of good effort into this. Looks like they tried to add some texture and depth with the lighting effects, but it looks a little flat in my opinion. Pretty decent though. I'm gonna give this a B tier. Number 40, the Fishbowl. I love the concept, but the execution could have done a little bit better in my opinion. We're gonna give it a C tier. Number 41, Perfect Slice. It has the H3 colors, but I think it could have used a little more work. This one's gonna get a D tier. Number 42, the In-Person Steamies. I think this is Sam's best work. It's gonna get an S. Number 43, Ethan's Birthday. This one's super dark and looked a lot better in person, but on the live stream, not too great. This is definitely the worst looking of the live shows. F tier. Here is the final chart of the H3 podcast backgrounds. And that wraps up my rankings of the H3 podcast backgrounds, from the iconic to the questionable. Each one has left its mark on the show's history in its own unique way. Whether you agreed with my rankings or think I missed the mark, leave a comment below and let me know what you think. Which background is your favorite? Which do you think deserves an S or an F? Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.